In a quiet suburban neighborhood, where tree-lined streets whispered stories of comfort and charm, Sarah Thompson stood on the porch of a sprawling luxury home. The morning sun cast golden rays across the manicured lawn, and the scent of freshly cut grass lingered in the air. Sarah, an ambitious real estate agent in her early 30s, adjusted her blazer and glanced at her watch. She had spent hours preparing for this showing, polishing countertops, fluffing pillows, and ensuring every corner of the house gleamed with perfection. Today was supposed to be her chance to shine. Sarah's career hadn't been going well lately. For weeks, she'd struggled to find clients who were serious about buying. Most of the people who came to view the homes she showcased either disappeared after one meeting or turned out to be window shoppers with no intention of making an offer. It was frustrating, but Sarah refused to give up. She believed that if she worked hard enough, her luck would eventually change. This property, a stunning 5-bedroom estate with vaulted ceilings and a backyard pool, was her best shot yet. All she needed was the right buyer, one person willing to see its potential and fall in love with it. Just as Sarah was checking her phone for updates on prospective visitors, a car pulled into the driveway. A sleek black sedan rolled to a stop, and a man stepped out. He wore faded jeans, a plain gray t-shirt, and sunglasses that hid half his face. His dark hair was slightly messy, as though he hadn't bothered combing it that morning. He looked around casually, taking in the exterior of the house before walking toward her. "Hi," he said, his voice calm and friendly. "I'm here for the showing." Sarah blinked, momentarily caught off guard. She had expected someone dressed more formally, someone who exuded wealth and confidence. Instead, this man seemed ordinary. Too ordinary. Still, she plastered on her brightest smile and extended her hand. "Good morning. Welcome to 124 Maple Lane. I'm Sarah Thompson, your real estate agent. Are you looking for something specific?" The man shook her hand firmly. "Nice to meet you, Sarah. You can call me John. I've been thinking about moving to the area, so I figured I'd check out a few places while I'm here." Sarah nodded politely, though her mind raced. John? That couldn't possibly be his real name. People didn't just walk into multi-million-dollar homes calling themselves by generic names like John. Was he trying to keep a low profile? Or worse, was he wasting her time? Determined not to jump to conclusions, she gestured for him to follow her inside. "Well, John, let me show you what this place has to offer." As they stepped through the front door, Sarah launched into her rehearsed spiel. She pointed out the grand foyer with its marble floors and crystal chandelier, then led him into the living room, where floor-to-ceiling windows framed breathtaking views of the garden. "This is perfect for entertaining guests," she said, enthusiastically. "Imagine hosting holiday parties or family gatherings here." John nodded thoughtfully, running his fingers along the edge of the fireplace mantel. "It's nice," he said simply. "Do you know how old the house is?" Caught off guard by the question, Sarah hesitated. She hadn't memorized every detail of the property's history. It wasn't something most buyers cared about, but she quickly recovered. "Oh, it was built about 15 years ago. Very sturdy construction, though. These kinds of homes are designed to last." He smiled faintly. "Good to know." They moved on to the kitchen next, a chef's dream with stainless steel appliances, granite countertops, and a massive island in the center. Sarah gestured dramatically as if unveiling a masterpiece. "And here we have the heart of the home. Plenty of space for cooking, baking, or even setting up a little coffee station over there by the window." John leaned against the counter, his expression unreadable behind those sunglasses. Do you think it could use some updating? Maybe modern cabinets or a different backsplash?" Sarah's enthusiasm wavered. Updating? Did this guy even understand how much money that would cost? She forced another smile. "Of course, anything is possible with the right budget. Renovations can really add value to a property." For a moment, John said nothing. Then he straightened up and continued, following her through the house. They explored the bedrooms, each larger than the last, and the master bathroom, complete with a jacuzzi tub and rainfall shower. Sarah noticed that John seemed genuinely interested in certain features, asking questions about plumbing systems, insulation and energy efficiency. But his laid-back demeanor made it hard for her to take him seriously. Who wore sneakers and a wrinkled t-shirt to view a multi-million-dollar home? By the time they reached the backyard, Sarah's patience was wearing thin. She tried to stay professional, pointing out the infinity pool, outdoor kitchen, and pergola-covered seating area. "This is ideal for summer barbecues or relaxing evenings under the stars," she said, injecting as much excitement into her voice as she could muster. "That's cool," John replied, nodding slowly. "But do you think it gets too hot out here during the day? Like, would I need to install shades or something?" Sarah bit back a sigh. Seriously? Shades? At this point, she was convinced that John wasn't a serious buyer. He was probably just some random guy curious about fancy houses, or worse, someone hoping to impress friends by pretending he might buy one. Either way, she decided to wrap things up quickly. After all, she had better things to do than waste her time on someone who clearly couldn't afford this place. As they headed back inside, Sarah glanced at her reflection in a hallway mirror and silently reminded herself to stay calm. No matter how irritated she felt, she couldn't let it show. Professionalism was key, even when dealing with difficult clients. Still, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she was stuck in a scene from a bad sitcom. How had her morning gone from hopeful to utterly ridiculous in less than an hour? Little did Sarah know, however, that the situation was about to take a turn she could never have anticipated. As Sarah and John made their way back inside, the atmosphere between them had shifted. Sarah's forced enthusiasm was beginning to crack, replaced by a growing sense of frustration. She couldn't understand why this man, who looked like he'd just rolled out of bed, was wasting her time with endless questions about renovations, energy bills, and backyard shade solutions. Each query felt like another nail in the coffin of her already strained patience. They entered the dining room, where a grand chandelier hung above a polished mahogany table that could easily seat 12 guests. Sarah gestured toward it with a flourish, trying to reignite some semblance of excitement. "And here we have the formal dining area," she said, her tone bright but clipped. "Perfect for hosting dinner parties or celebrating special occasions." John tilted his head, studying the space thoughtfully. "It's nice, I guess, but do you think it's practical? Like, how often would someone actually use this room?" Sarah blinked, momentarily thrown off by the question. Practical? This wasn't about practicality. It was about luxury, status, and living the dream. Still, she forced herself to answer. "Well, it depends on your lifestyle. Some people love having a dedicated space for entertaining guests. It adds elegance to any gathering." John nodded slowly, though his expression remained unreadable behind those sunglasses. "I see. Do you think most people end up using it as storage instead?" The comment caught Sarah off guard, and for a split second, she wondered if he was mocking her. Was this some kind of game to him? A way to pass the time while poking fun at overly eager real estate agents? Her irritation bubbled closer to the surface, but she swallowed it down and pressed on. Professionalism, she reminded herself. Stay professional. Next, they moved upstairs to the master bedroom suite. The room was spacious with plush carpeting, a private balcony overlooking the backyard, and an ensuite bathroom fit for royalty. Sarah swept her arm across the space dramatically. "This is the crown jewel of the house, the master retreat. Look at the natural light pouring in through these windows. And over there, you'll find custom-built closets with more than enough space for all your belongings." John wandered over to the closet, inspecting its design. These shelves are pretty deep. Do you think they're adjustable? Sometimes I prefer things to be customizable." Sarah clenched her jaw, but managed to keep her smile intact. "Yes, they're completely adjustable. You can rearrange them however you like." "Good," he said, nodding again. "That's important. What about the lighting? Is it easy to change bulbs, or will I need to call an electrician every time one burns out?" At this point, Sarah was barely holding it together. Lighting? Bulbs? Who cared about such trivial details when they were standing in a multi-million-dollar mansion? She plastered on yet another fake smile and replied, "The fixtures are high quality and designed for convenience. Changing bulbs won't be an issue. Despite her best efforts to remain composed, Sarah's tone grew sharper with each response. She led John through the remaining rooms, a home office, a media room, and a bonus room that could serve as a gym or playroom. But her earlier charm had evaporated. Every question he asked seemed calculated to test her limits, and she found herself struggling to mask her growing annoyance. When they finally returned to the main floor, Sarah decided to speed things up. She ushered John into the kitchen once more, hoping to wrap up the tour quickly. So, as you can see, this property offers everything you could possibly want in a luxury home. Space, style, functionality, it's all here. John leaned against the island, crossing his arms casually. Yeah, it's definitely impressive. But I'm still not sure about the kitchen. If I wanted to renovate it, what kind of budget would I need? Sarah froze, her mind racing. Budget? He was seriously asking about budgets now? She glanced at his worn sneakers and plain t-shirt, then back at the gleaming appliances surrounding them. How could someone dressed so casually even consider remodeling a kitchen like this? The disconnect was maddening. Well, she began, her voice tight. A full renovation could cost anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, depending on the materials and labor involved. John raised an eyebrow. That much, huh? Wow. With what budget? The words slipped out before she realized how condescending they sounded. For a brief moment, silence filled the air. John's sunglasses hid his eyes, but Sarah could feel his gaze boring into her. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she realized what she'd just said. Oh, I didn't mean it like that, she stammered, fumbling for an apology. I just meant that renovations can get expensive, so it's important to plan ahead. It's fine, John said quietly, though his tone suggested otherwise. He pushed away from the counter and started walking toward the front door. Thanks for showing me around, I'll think about it. Sarah followed him, panic rising in her chest. Had she blown it? Had her sarcastic remark ruined any chance of making a sale? She scrambled to recover, trailing after him as he stepped onto the porch. Wait, John! If you have any other questions or need help narrowing down your options, I'm happy to assist. This process can be overwhelming, and I want to make sure you're comfortable. He turned to face her, his expression calm but unreadable. You've been very thorough, Sarah. Thanks for your time. With that, he walked back to his car, got in, and drove away without another word. As Sarah watched the sedan disappear down the street, she felt a mix of relief and regret wash over her. On one hand, she was glad the awkward encounter was over. On the other, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd missed an opportunity. Maybe John had been more serious than she'd given him credit for. Maybe she'd let her assumptions cloud her judgment. Little did she know fate had something else in store. Back inside the house, Sarah pulled out her phone to check her emails and saw a notification pop up on her celebrity gossip app. The headline stopped her cold. Keanu Reeves spotted house hunting in city name. Below it was a photo of the same man who had just left her standing on the porch. Her heart sank as realization hit her like a freight train. That wasn't John. It was Keanu Reeves, one of the most famous actors in the world, known for his humility, kindness, and down-to-earth personality, and she had treated him like some clueless nobody. Sarah's hands trembled as she stared at the screen, her mind replaying every dismissive comment, every eye roll, every trace of impatience she'd shown during the tour. How could she have been so blind? How could she have misjudged him so completely? For several long minutes she stood frozen, overwhelmed by a mix of shame and disbelief. Then determination took hold. There was no undoing what had happened, but maybe, just maybe, she could fix it. If Keanu Reeves really was looking for a home, she wouldn't let pride or embarrassment stand in her way. She owed it to herself, to her career, and most importantly, to him to make things right. With renewed resolve, Sarah grabbed her keys and headed for her car. She didn't know where Keanu had gone, or whether he'd ever agree to speak to her again. But she knew one thing for certain: she couldn't give up without trying. Sarah's mind raced as she sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. The photo on her phone was still open, showing Keanu Reeves smiling faintly in front of a cafe downtown, a place he'd been spotted earlier that week. It wasn't much to go on, but it was all she had. She knew she couldn't just sit there wallowing in regret. She had to act fast if she wanted to salvage the situation. Her first instinct was to call him directly. But then reality set in. What number would she even dial? She didn't have his contact information, and tracking down a celebrity like Keanu wouldn't be easy. For a moment, panic threatened to take over. But Sarah was nothing if not resourceful. She reminded herself that this wasn't just about saving face. It was about proving she could rise above her mistakes and turn things around. Taking a deep breath, Sarah decided to start with the basics. She opened her laptop and began searching for any leads on where Keanu might be staying or what properties he was interested in. Social media posts, local news articles, real estate forums, anything that could give her a clue. Hours passed as she scoured the internet, piecing together fragments of information. Finally, she stumbled upon a promising lead, a rental listing for a small guest house near the city center. According to an anonymous tip on a fan forum, Keanu had reportedly leased it temporarily while house hunting. Without wasting another second, Sarah hopped into her car and drove straight to the address. When she arrived, she parked a few houses away, unsure of how to approach him without coming across as desperate or intrusive. Her heart pounded as she walked up the driveway of the modest property, rehearsing what she would say in her head. She needed to strike the right balance between apologizing sincerely and respecting his privacy. Before she could knock on the door, however, she noticed movement through the window. A figure emerged from inside, tall, lean, unmistakably Keanu. He wore the same casual attire as before, but now he carried a guitar case slung over one shoulder. Sarah froze, suddenly feeling out of place and underprepared. How could she possibly explain herself without sounding pathetic? Summoning every ounce of courage, she stepped forward and called out softly, "Mr. Reeves?" Keanu stopped in his tracks and turned toward her. His expression was calm, though tinged with curiosity. "Yes," he said, tilting his head slightly. Sarah swallowed hard, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Hi, I'm Sarah Thompson. We met earlier today at the house on Maple Lane." Recognition flickered in his eyes, followed by a polite nod. "Oh, right, the real estate agent." "Yes," she said quickly, taking a step closer. "Listen, I wanted to apologize for how I acted during the tour. I realize I came off as dismissive, and honestly, I feel terrible about it. You were asking thoughtful questions, and I should have treated you with more respect. I let my assumptions get the better of me, and I'm really sorry." For a moment, Keanu didn't respond. He studied her carefully, his gaze steady but kind. Then, to Sarah's immense relief, he smiled. "It's okay," he said gently. "I understand. People often make judgments based on appearances. Happens to me all the time." His words hit her like a punch to the gut. Here was one of the most famous men in the world, someone who could easily have shut her down or demanded an explanation from her boss, yet he was brushing off her behavior with grace and understanding. It only made her feel worse, and more determined to make amends. "No, it's not okay," she insisted, shaking her head. "You deserve better than how I treated you. If you're still considering buying a home, I'd like the chance to help. You find the perfect place, not because I want to close a deal, but because I genuinely want to make things right." Keanu hesitated, clearly weighing her sincerity. After a pause, he nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "I appreciate that. To be honest, I did like the house we saw earlier. It has potential. But I also want to look at other options before making a decision." Sarah's heart leapt with hope. "Of course, I can pull together a list of properties tailored to your preferences, whatever you're looking for. Whether it's something modern, rustic, or completely unique, I'll find it for you." He chuckled softly, his demeanor warming. "You sound pretty confident." "I am," she replied, her determination shining through. "And I promise this time I'll listen to everything you have to say. No shortcuts, no assumptions." Keanu grinned, seemingly amused by her enthusiasm. "Okay, Sarah, Let's give it a shot. But fair warning, I ask a lot of questions. That's fine, she said, smiling despite the lingering guilt. Questions are good, they mean you're serious. Over the next hour, Sarah and Keanu sat together at a nearby cafe, discussing his needs and preferences in detail. She learned that he valued privacy above all else, preferring homes tucked away from busy streets or prying eyes. He also loved spaces with character, wooden beams, exposed brick, anything that gave a house a sense of history. And while luxury mattered to some extent, functionality was key. He wanted a home that felt lived in, not like a museum. As they talked, Sarah found herself genuinely enjoying the conversation. Keanu's humility and warmth put her at ease, and she realized how wrong she'd been to judge him earlier. Beneath his unassuming exterior lay a man who cared deeply about the details of life, the little things that made a house a home. By the time they parted ways, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. She thanked Keanu for giving her a second chance and promised to send over a curated list of properties within the next 2 days. As she watched him walk away, guitar case in hand, she couldn't help but marvel at how drastically her day had turned around. What had started as a humiliating encounter was now an opportunity, not just to redeem herself professionally, but to grow personally. That night, as Sarah worked late into the evening compiling listings and reaching out to colleagues for exclusive access to hidden gems, she reflected on the lesson she'd learned. Never again would she let preconceived notions cloud her judgment. From now on, she vowed to treat everyone with the same level of respect and attentiveness, regardless of how they looked or presented themselves. Little did she know, this experience would change more than just her approach to real estate. It would mark the beginning of an unexpected friendship, one that would teach her the true meaning of humility, kindness, and second chances. Over the next few days, Sarah threw herself into her work with a level of dedication she hadn't felt in years. She scoured every available listing, contacted colleagues for off-market properties, and even reached out to architects and designers to better understand how certain renovations could enhance a home's appeal. Her goal was simple: to prove to Keanu and to herself that she was capable of delivering exceptional service. This wasn't just about closing a sale anymore. It was about earning his trust and showing him that she valued his time and input. The first property she arranged for him to see was a secluded estate nestled in the hills overlooking the city. It had everything Keanu had mentioned during their conversation at the cafe: privacy, character, and functionality. The house featured exposed wooden beams, large windows that bathed the interior in natural light, and a sprawling backyard surrounded by tall trees. As they walked through the space together, Sarah noticed how much more engaged he seemed compared to their previous tour. He asked thoughtful questions, pointed out features he liked, and even shared ideas for potential improvements. Sarah listened intently, jotting down notes and offering insights whenever appropriate. Gone was the dismissive attitude from before. Instead, she approached each interaction with genuine curiosity and respect. When Keanu expressed concern about the kitchen layout being too cramped, she suggested creative solutions like removing a wall or installing an island to open up the space. When he admired the stone fireplace in the living room, but wondered if it could be modernized, she promised to connect him with a designer who specialized in blending rustic charm with contemporary aesthetics. By the end of the tour, Keanu seemed genuinely impressed, not just with the house, but with Sarah's efforts. "You've really put a lot of thought into this," he said as they stood on the deck, gazing out at the panoramic view of the city below. "I appreciate it." Sarah smiled, though a part of her still felt cautious. "Thank you. I want to make sure we find something that feels right for you. Not just because it ticks boxes, but because it feels like home." Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly what I'm looking for. Somewhere that feels peaceful." Encouraged by his positive response, Sarah continued organizing viewings over the following week. Each property was carefully selected, based on his preferences, and she made sure to highlight its unique qualities, while remaining honest about any drawbacks. They visited a mid-century modern masterpiece with clean lines and minimalist decor, A cozy farmhouse with wraparound porches and vintage fixtures, and even a lakeside cottage tucked away in the countryside. With each new location, Sarah grew more confident in her ability to meet his expectations. But it wasn't just her professional skills that improved. It was her perspective. Spending time with Keanu gave her a glimpse into his world, one marked by humility and authenticity despite his fame. During one particularly memorable drive between showings, they found themselves chatting casually about life beyond real estate. Keanu opened up about the challenges of navigating Hollywood, sharing stories about how people often treated him differently once they realized who he was. Sometimes they became overly eager to please, while others dismissed him outright when he didn't conform to their expectations. "It's funny," he said with a wry smile. "People think they know me because they've seen my movies or read interviews. But the truth is, I'm just a regular guy trying to figure things out like everyone else." Sarah nodded, her heart swelling with admiration. "I can relate to that in a way. In my job, I meet so many different kinds of people, and sometimes I forget to look past the surface. I let assumptions get in the way of seeing them for who they really are. And honestly, that's on me." Keanu glanced at her, his expression softening. "We all make mistakes, Sarah. What matters is what we do after we realize them." His words stayed with her long after their conversation ended. Over the next few days, she began noticing subtle changes in how she interacted with clients and colleagues alike. Instead of rushing through tours or brushing off questions, she took the time to truly listen. She stopped trying to impress people with flashy presentations and focused instead on understanding their needs. Slowly but surely, her reputation started to shift, not just as someone who could sell houses, but as someone who genuinely cared about helping others find their perfect home. One evening, after showing Keanu a charming Tudor-style house with ivy-covered walls and stained glass windows, they sat together in the garden sipping coffee. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the landscape. For a moment, neither of them spoke, content to simply enjoy the peaceful atmosphere. Finally, Keanu broke the silence. "You know, Sarah, I wasn't sure what to expect when I agreed to give you another chance, but I have to say you've exceeded my expectations." Sarah looked at him, surprised by the compliment. "Really? I mean, I hope so. I've been trying my best to make things right." "You have," he said firmly, "and it shows. You're not just doing your job. You're putting your heart into it. That makes a big difference." Her eyes welled with tears, though she quickly blinked them away. "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." He smiled, leaning back in his chair. "Don't thank me, yet. We haven't found the one quite yet." They both laughed, the tension melting away. In that moment, Sarah realized something profound. This journey wasn't just about finding Keanu a house. It was about rediscovering her passion for her career and learning to approach life with greater empathy and openness. Every step forward brought her closer not only to helping him achieve his dream, but also to becoming the person she wanted to be. As the sky darkened and stars began to twinkle above, Sarah felt a deep sense of gratitude. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't just going through the motions. She was living fully, embracing every opportunity to grow and connect. And no matter where this path led, she knew one thing for certain. It had already changed her life in ways she never anticipated. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah and Keanu continued their search for the perfect home. Each property they visited brought them closer to understanding not just what Keanu wanted in a house, but also who he was as a person. Through their conversations and shared experiences, Sarah began to see glimpses of the man behind the celebrity, a thoughtful, introspective individual who valued simplicity, authenticity, and connection. One afternoon, they found themselves at a stunning estate nestled deep within a forested area. The house was unlike anything they'd seen before, a blend of modern architecture and natural elements, with floor-to-ceiling glass walls that seemed to merge the indoors with the lush surroundings. A winding stone path led to a small meditation garden, complete with a koi pond and a bamboo grove. It was serene, almost otherworldly, and Sarah could tell immediately that it resonated with Keanu. "This place feels Different, he said, softly as they stood on the deck overlooking the trees. Like it exists in its own little world. Sarah nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. It's beautiful, quiet, peaceful. I can see why you like it. Keanu walked over to the edge of the deck, his hands resting lightly on the railing. It reminds me of places I've traveled to, remote spots where you feel completely disconnected from everything else. Like time slows down and you can just breathe. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the rustling leaves and the distant chirping of birds. Sarah watched him closely, realizing how much this property reflected his personality. Calm, understated, yet deeply meaningful. She felt a surge of pride knowing she had helped guide him here, to a place that truly aligned with his vision of home. Over the next hour, they explored every corner of the house, discussing its potential and imagining how it could be tailored to suit Keanu's lifestyle. He loved the open-concept living space, the cozy reading nook tucked beneath a skylight, and the private studio where he could write music or practice guitar. But what sealed the deal for him was the outdoor shower, a simple, elegant design surrounded by ferns and moss-covered stones. If I lived here, he said with a grin, I'd probably spend half my time outside. Sarah laughed, feeling lighter than she had in ages. Well, if that's the case, maybe we should start talking about landscaping options. You'll want plenty of shade trees and maybe some climbing vines for privacy. Keanu raised an eyebrow, amused. You're already planning renovations? Hey, I'm just doing my job, she teased, though there was truth in her words. Helping clients envision the possibilities of a space was something she excelled at now, thanks in large part to Keanu's influence. He had taught her to look beyond surface-level features and focus on how a home could enhance someone's life. By the time they left the property, Keanu was practically glowing with excitement. This might be it, he admitted as they drove back toward the city. It's got everything I've been looking for and more. Sarah smiled, thrilled that he finally seemed satisfied. I think so too. It fits you perfectly. Later that evening, after dropping Keanu off at his temporary guest house, Sarah sat alone in her car, replaying the day's events in her mind. She couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come since their disastrous first meeting. Then she had dismissed him without a second thought, letting her biases cloud her judgment. Now she saw him not just as a client but as a friend, a kindred spirit who reminded her of the importance of humility and perspective. Reflecting on their journey together, Sarah realized how much she had grown, not just professionally, but personally. Keanu's quiet wisdom and unwavering patience had inspired her to reevaluate her approach to life. She no longer viewed her career as a series of transactions. Instead, she saw it as an opportunity to connect with people, to understand their dreams and help bring them to fruition. Her newfound mindset wasn't limited to work either. It spilled over into her personal relationships, making her a better listener, a more empathetic friend, and a more grounded individual. The next morning, Keanu called to confirm that he wanted to move forward with purchasing the forest estate. Overwhelmed with joy, Sarah immediately set to work finalizing the paperwork and coordinating with the sellers. For the first time in her career, she didn't feel pressured to rush through the process. Instead, she took her time, ensuring every detail was handled with care and precision. This wasn't just another sale, it was a milestone, both for Keanu and for herself. Throughout the closing period, Sarah and Keanu stayed in touch, exchanging texts and emails about everything from paint colors to furniture layouts. Their interactions were warm and lighthearted, filled with laughter and mutual respect. One evening, while reviewing blueprints for a custom bookshelf Keanu wanted to install, they ended up talking about their favorite books and authors. By the end of the conversation, they had compiled a shared reading list, promising to swap recommendations once he moved in. When the day finally came to sign the papers, Sarah accompanied Keanu to the lawyer's office, where they celebrated the occasion with champagne and heartfelt congratulations. As they shook hands, sealing the deal, Keanu looked at her with genuine gratitude. You've been incredible through all of this, Sarah. Thank you for sticking with me, even when I Wasn't the easiest client. She laughed, shaking her head. Are you kidding? You've been amazing. This whole experience has been, well, transformative for me. I owe you a lot. He smiled warmly. Let's call it even then. Friends? Absolutely, she replied, her heart swelling with emotion. Friends. In the weeks that followed, Sarah continued to assist Keanu with settling into his new home. She introduced him to local contractors, landscapers, and interior designers, ensuring he had everything. He needed to make the space his own. In return, he invited her to visit whenever she liked, treating her not as a business associate but as someone he genuinely enjoyed spending time with. Through it all, Sarah remained acutely aware of how fortunate she was to have crossed paths with someone like Keanu. He had taught her invaluable lessons about kindness, resilience, and the power of second chances. More importantly, he had shown her that true success wasn't measured by accolades or achievements. It was defined by the connections we forge and the impact we have on others' lives. As she drove away from Keanu's estate one crisp autumn afternoon, Sarah glanced at her rearview mirror and caught sight of him waving goodbye from the porch. For a moment, she allowed herself to savor the bittersweetness of closure. This chapter of her life was ending, but it had opened doors she never knew existed. And as she headed back to the city, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain. She would carry the lessons she'd learned and the friendship she'd gained with her forever. The weeks that followed Keanu's move into his new forest estate marked the start of an unexpected friendship between him and Sarah. What had begun as a professional relationship rooted in real estate evolved into something deeper, a bond built on mutual respect, shared experiences, and countless conversations about life beyond the confines of their initial roles. Sarah found herself visiting Keanu's home more often than she'd anticipated, not because it was part of her job, but because she genuinely enjoyed his company. Their interactions were no longer centered around property listings or renovation plans. Instead, they revolved around simpler, more meaningful topics. They talked about books, music, travel, and even childhood memories. Each visit revealed another layer of Keanu's personality, his love for storytelling, his passion for helping others, and his quiet humor that could light up any room. One crisp Saturday morning, Sarah arrived at the estate to find Keanu tinkering with an old motorcycle parked in the driveway. She raised an eyebrow, amused. I didn't know you were into bikes, she said, leaning against the fence. He glanced up, wiping grease-stained hands on a rag. Oh, this? It's been sitting in storage for years. I thought it might be fun to restore it. Fun? She teased. Looks like hard work to me. Keanu chuckled, gesturing for her to join him. Hard work is fun if you're doing it for yourself. Want to give me a hand? Without hesitation, Sarah rolled up her sleeves and joined him. Over the next few hours, they worked side by side, passing tools back and forth and laughing at their amateur attempts to fix stubborn parts. By the end of the day, they hadn't accomplished much in terms of progress, but they'd forged a memory neither would soon forget. These moments became a recurring theme in their friendship, whether it was helping Keanu plant trees along the edge of his property, brainstorming ideas for a community garden he wanted to create, or simply sharing meals under the stars. Sarah discovered that Keanu's presence brought out the best in her. He encouraged her to embrace spontaneity, to step outside her comfort zone, and to see beauty in the ordinary. In return, she offered him a sense of normalcy, a break from the pressures of fame and the constant scrutiny that came with being a public figure. Their connection extended beyond personal interactions, too. Inspired by Keanu's humility and generosity, Sarah began implementing changes in her own career. She started hosting workshops for aspiring real estate agents, emphasizing the importance of empathy, authenticity, and ethical practices. Her reputation in the industry grew not just because of her success in high-profile deals, but because of the values she championed. Clients praised her for treating them like human beings rather than transactions, and colleagues admired her willingness to mentor newcomers. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings, Sarah received a call from Keanu. Hey, are you free tomorrow afternoon? He asked, his tone casual but intriguing. I think so, she replied, curious. Why? Well, he said, pausing dramatically, I was thinking we could grab coffee. But not just anywhere. We'll go somewhere. Special? Special turned out to be a cozy cafe tucked away in the heart of the city, far removed from the glitz and glamour typically associated with celebrity hangouts. The walls were adorned with local artwork, and the air smelled faintly of freshly baked pastries. As they settled into a corner booth, Keanu pulled out a small envelope and slid it across the table. What's this? Sarah asked, raising an eyebrow. Open it, he urged, smiling mischievously. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note and a photograph of the two of them standing beside the restored motorcycle. Below the photo, Keanu had written, To Sarah, thank you for reminding me what it means to trust people again. You've made this journey unforgettable. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she read the words. Keanu, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he said softly. Just promise me one thing, that you'll keep being exactly who you are. The world needs more people like you. His kindness overwhelmed her, but it also reinforced everything she had learned during their time together. Success wasn't defined by accolades or material wealth. It was measured by the impact you had on others' lives and the connections you nurtured along the way. As their friendship continued to flourish, Sarah noticed subtle shifts in how she approached challenges, both big and small. When difficult clients tested her patience, she reminded herself of Keanu's calm demeanor and ability to diffuse tension with grace. When setbacks threatened to derail her goals, she drew strength from his resilience and unwavering optimism. And when self-doubt crept in, she remembered the lessons he'd taught her about embracing imperfection and learning from mistakes. Years later, when Sarah looked back on her life, she realized that meeting Keanu had been a turning point, a moment that reshaped her perspective and set her on a path toward fulfillment. Their friendship had transcended boundaries, proving that true character shines brightest in moments of vulnerability and forgiveness. And while Keanu eventually moved on to new adventures, leaving behind the forest estate for yet another chapter, in his extraordinary life, Sarah knew their bond would endure. Whenever they crossed paths at charity events, film premieres, or chance encounters in the city, they picked up right where they left off, their connection as strong as ever. In the end, what began as a humiliating encounter transformed into a story of redemption, growth, and enduring friendship. For Sarah, it served as a reminder that every interaction holds the potential for transformation, if only we approach it with an open heart and a willingness to learn. And for Keanu, it reaffirmed his belief in the power of kindness to bridge divides and inspire change. Though their lives took different directions, the legacy of their friendship remained, a testament to the idea that sometimes the most profound relationships arise from the unlikeliest beginnings.